All right, a quick joke before we get started. I went to bed last night and she yells at me, "You're drunk." And I said, "How can you tell?" She says, "You live next door." Oops. All right. Well, happy Monday evening. As a reminder, you can download these podcasts with no ads on the Patreon page for Total OS Today. Just search Toss Today. On Patreon, you can download these for as little as $1 a month to join. The best deal out there in tech podcast, I think. All right, give me a second here to pour some more wine, and we'll get started on your comments. A comments corner: why Windows users can't switch to Linux. Okay, so for tonight, I am broadcasting from Ubuntu, a tweaked, modified version of Ubuntu, not recommended for beginners. If you are absolutely new to the world of Linux, check out Zorn OS, Linux Mint, or even a Chromebook if you want pure speed. But for tonight, we're doing this from my tweaked Ubuntu on a 12-year-old Gateway PC, which originally had Windows 8. Yeah, it's still running. So we're going to take a look at some of your comments here on the video, why Windows users can't switch to Linux. I do appreciate all of your comments. I'm not going to comment on every single one of them. That would be a 2-hour show, and it's kind of late for that for tonight. Maybe another night we'll do a 2-hour show. I'm not sure. But for tonight, just some of your comments on why Windows users can't switch to Linux. There are many reasons, and we'll get into that here in just a moment. All right, let's go into some of the comments. Again, thank you for all of your comments. This is from Magulu. That sounds like a Linux distribution. Magulu 5131. Hello. I switched to Linux Mint Cinnamon on my older computer last year. When the end of service comes for Win 10 in October of this year, this computer will go to Cinnamon too. Only my laptop will stay Windows 10 for a while, and eventually it'll go to some flavor of Linux. Well, Linux Mint is definitely a good choice. I prefer the Mate desktop. To me, it's a little bit more intuitive and lighter for older PCs like mine. But you really cannot go wrong with any version of Linux Mint, in my opinion. Okay, next up, this is from James McCloskey. Hello. He says, Microsoft Office. Most people don't know about using it for free on the web. Yeah, there are quite a few web-based apps that you don't have to download or install anything. That are both for Windows and Linux, and I think this is one of the reasons why Chromebooks are so popular. Besides that they work, there's a lot of web-based apps that you can use for Linux-based systems, such as a Chromebook or whatever Linux-based system you are using. Thank you, James, for the comment. Neo910. Hi. For the kids, he says, and if for this, I never really thought about. I did reply to this one, and you are right about the kids, by the way. Okay, for the kids, the biggest reason is Roblox, and it's blocked by the devs from working through Wine as well due to concerns surrounding hacking and cheating supposedly being easier and more prevalent on Linux. Very unfortunate, as Linux is a great platform to protect the kids from fiddling with the OS and clicking on the endless Windows pop-ups, not really realizing what they are doing. I don't know about endless Windows pop-ups, but you made a point about Linux being for kids, and it certainly can be. I think there are a few Linux distributions out there still designed for kids or families with kids. But you made a good point, and thank you for the comment. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Mark P. 2085. He says, I use both Linux and Windows. I wish I could use Linux full-time, but the software selection on Linux is slim. Plus, I am a gamer, use VR, wheel, joysticks, controllers, etc. It's always a fight to get to these things working, if at all, in Linux. Plus, many of my games do not work in Linux. I am also a content creator. I've moved I have moved most of my web design, graphic design, and video production to Linux. I think that's great. But Linux is a battle. Things always break and require constant troubleshooting. Plus, I have all types of neat software on Windows that has no counterpart in Linux. As an example, I use Directory Opus as my file manager in Windows. Linux has many file managers, but none give you the flexibility and customization that Opus does. Mark, thank you. I have to be honest, I'm not familiar with Directory Opus. I guess it's better than Windows for a file manager. I don't know about that. Linux certainly can be, well, I should say some Linux can be certainly more flexible. I guess it all comes down to which Linux you are using. It looks like for now you're using both. For gamers, yeah, just stick with Windows. You will have less issues. As far as Linux being a battle, maybe most Linux is for new users, but there is some Linux out there that is certainly not a battle. I mentioned Zorn OS, Linux Mint, certainly Chromebooks. I've never had to fix anything in the Chromebook. They just work. I've never had to use the terminal in a Chromebook, like never. But for gamers, yeah, probably not a Chromebook. But, you know, yeah, I mean, for you gamers, yeah, I would stick with Windows. This is from Jedi Padawan 7023. I have a guy begging me to install Linux on his old ThinkPad. Do it, you can do it. Like Arnold says, get to the ThinkPad. Forget the chopper. Yes, I have Linux on a couple of ThinkPads. ThinkPads and Linux are a great marriage if you have the time to install it yourself. ThinkPad, start with a ThinkPad. You have yet to see what version of Windows it runs. People just cannot buy all new hardware to run Windows 11, especially where you live in Southeast Asia. Wow. When I offer a free alternative that can run modern software and do Google, and that's all a lot of people use these days. They just want to run Google apps and YouTube and of. Okay, I will be testing the hardware compatibility via USB boot this weekend. Good, that's a good tip. Test it first. Last weekend was interrupted by an insane yellow cat. No, really, yellow. Okay, attacking and tearing your left hand apart. Never had anything like it. Well, that's because the cat's trying to say, don't install Arch. Meow, not Arch. I don't know what you're installing, by the way, but that is funny. Anyway, back to what I said. ThinkPads and Linux. I've never had a ThinkPad fail me on some Linux-based systems. All right, a few more here. This is from Shabu. No, wait. Shabadoo. Ba-ba-ba-boo. Freddie Flintstone said. Shabadoo, 4918. For me, it's 99% that Windows plays all the games and is intuitive because I grew up with it and it has a UI for basically everything. I never have to wonder if something is going to work. It all just works. True. But then again, Linux-based Chromebooks all just work. And some Linux systems, 99% I believe of Linux Mint, Zorn OS, maybe a few more, I believe that 99% of that will work. Yes. Maybe not for games, but in general it will work. Let's see here. Captain Yesterday 3463. Don't know, Linux sucks. Which Linux? I agree, some Linux does suck, but which one? Tried a few of them, feels primitive. Even Windows 98 is better than the newest version of Linux. I don't know about that. Lots of people keep bitching about Windows 11, but you should try the pirated slim versions where all the spyware and useless adware has been purged. No. Don't download any Windows pirated versions because those may have spyware and viruses in themselves. Don't do it. Download a regular Windows 11 from the Microsoft website and I would try to debloat it yourself. Alright, I still use Windows Office 2003 for everything work-related. Never had the initiative to change to something newer. Same goes for Corel 4 from 93. Wow, Windows Photoshop from 2000, Windows Movie Maker. It sounds like you just need Windows. But to say that Linux sucks as a general phrase, it's just not true. Most, maybe Linux sucks, I'll give you that, but have you ever tried a Chromebook? it's got to be impossible to say that a Chromebook sucks. It may not be for you, but Chromebooks are it is a modified version of Linux, Gen 2. They just work, and you can't just say a computer that just works. You just can't say it sucks. So anyway, that's my take on that. This is from Will That. I will. You went 5 months with Arch. Wow. This time around, it was pretty good for the most part. It's just like every time I try actually living with Linux, every time something breaks, the thing that comes up in the search as the best possible fix is outdated. It doesn't work, or the answer is you choose the wrong distro, dummy. All I wanted was my freaking trackpad to work consistently. Sorry to hear that. If you got the advice that says you chose the wrong distro, dummy, I apologize for that, even though it wasn't me. I don't know which Linux you are using. Again, your Linux Mint, your Zorin OS, Chromebooks, a few more, you should not have that issue. With Arch, I can certainly understand why you would have that issue, and that is the wrong distro. Unless you are experienced, that is certainly the wrong distribution to choose, my friend. You know what? I think that's it for at least some of your comments on why Windows users can't switch to Linux. I hope, doing a video like that, I hope it helps someone. Look, I still use Windows. I don't necessarily have to anymore, but I do because I get it. Everything seems to work in Windows. For me, in some Linux, 99% of it seems to work. I almost never have to use a terminal. In a Chromebook, I never have to use a terminal. I do so sometimes by choice. By choice, I will. Now, some distributions like Ubuntu, which you see here on the screen, yeah, this requires a lot of modifications, tweaking to make it more user-friendly. I get it. But again, Ubuntu, just like any Linux, is a choice. If it's not for you, just don't use it. For me, since I'm a little bit more experienced over the course of almost 20 years, I can take something like Ubuntu, spend the time to tweak it, mainly for testing purposes. But again, not recommended for beginners. There's just too much to get involved with to make it, to tweak it, and you may wind up breaking something if you don't know what you're doing. But there is some Linux that I can count on one hand. I mentioned Zorin OS, Linux Mint, and maybe Ubuntu Mate and a few more that really do work. And you almost, again, I cannot promise you that you will never have to use the terminal unless you get a Chromebook. You may, but it isn't like every day. At least I've never seen that. And I still use Linux Mint on multiple machines. So it really does come down to which distribution you are using to avoid saying that Linux sucks. Okay, let me grab my wine here. Give me a second. I'll see if there is anybody in the chat for this evening. Again, as a reminder, you can download these podcasts if you want to support the channel here. You can go to the Toss Today Patreon page and download the edited audio versions of these shows without ads for as little as $1 a month. I think it's a bargain, but just my way of giving back to you guys. All right, let me grab my wine. Give me a minute, and I will check the chat, so don't go away. I love sweet red wine. I should have got a little bit of 7-Up, sprinkle it in there, make it into a what's it called? A spritzer, right? Something like that. Red wine and 7-Up or Sprite. Yeah, I think it's called a spritzer. I'm not a bartender, but I think they call it a spritzer. It sounds like Linux OS, right? I use Spritzer OS. All right. All right. So once again, thank you for all of your comments. There was quite a few for today, almost I think about 50, on why Windows users can't switch to Linux. Thank you for all of your comments. I do appreciate it. And again, I hope these types of videos try to help someone cutting through all of the total BS, as somebody said, because it's a lot of this stuff on YouTube, even today. It can be confusing. All right, William A is in the house. Hello, how are you? LJ Pellegrino, it's been a while, my friend. Howdy, howdy. Derek is in the house. Welcome. How are you for this Monday evening? How you guys doing, man? So do you guys use only Linux, or do you still use, or do you dual boot, or just on Windows? I dual boot 2 separate SSDs, for the most part on Linux. I love my dad's music. Anyway, William says you have a laptop with Windows 11. So do I. Have a ThinkPad. Like I said, ThinkPads, they're just rock solid. And you can get an excellent deal on refurbished ThinkPads on Amazon for either Windows 11 or some forms of Linux. They are great. Oh, you have 2 desktops with Linux. What a coincidence. So do I, William. I have, well, tonight's show I'm streaming with the Gateway PC that is 12 years old, that has both Ubuntu, modified version of Ubuntu, and Lubuntu on 2 separate SSDs. These machines are just chugging along, man, so I'll keep chugging along. They get the job done. They're not particularly zippy for rendering, finalizing videos. It takes forever, but they work. So, but yeah, I have 2 desktops connected to my 50-inch TV. I am still waiting for the immutable version of Ubuntu to be released. That's going to be probably the biggest news of the Linux decade. Maybe for the last 20 years. An immutable Linux, besides Chromebooks, that's not what I'm talking about. Besides that, an immutable Ubuntu for the masses. That should be very interesting. Well, speaking of Ubuntu, what's it called? The next one coming out next month? Plucky Puffin? Is that what it's called? Ubuntu 25? I think it's called Plucky Puffin. Nice ring to it, if that's what it's it. Plucky Puffin. Sounds like a cartoon, doesn't it? Let me check my OBS stats here. It looks like the stream is smooth and you guys can hear me fine. I'm hoping. Alright, just a few drop frames, not too much. Like I said, Ubuntu is certainly one of the more heavier Linux-based systems. But I think I got this tweaked to the point where it should be running good enough. I was catching up on some Linux news this morning, and I guess Mozilla Firefox is, wow, what a mess. From what I gather, I prefer Brave, and Google Chrome just works. But I've been looking at the Mulvad browser, but I would say pretty much Brave is the one I use to usually. But I guess, yeah, we've talked about privacy in the past, and I guess I said it doesn't exist the way we want it to exist, and I hate to say I told you so, but that's just the reality of the web nowadays. Did I see where the CEO of Firefox made $6 million a year? And I guess Firefox is losing money? Gee, I wonder why. If that's true. All right, I'll stick around for a little bit longer, see if anybody else wants to jump in the chat to say hello for this Monday evening. I'm going to check. Let me check the weather forecast here for tomorrow. Okay, a little bit better. I'll take it. All right, I think I'll wrap this up for this evening. Of course, if you missed the beginning of this, you can just go back and replay it. And those are, tonight we just spoke about some of your comments on why Windows users can't switch to Linux, and the reasons really haven't changed that much over the years. Linux has certainly gotten better than when I started with Ubuntu back in 2006, believe it or not. Much better. Well, I should say some, not all of it, for beginners. But certainly Linux has come a long way, and if you haven't already tried Linux, at least try. You know, preferably on a spare machine. You don't have to give up Windows. And who knows? You may be surprised, and you may stick around with it, and you may make new friends, and you might find life a little bit more pleasurable by using something different. You just never know until you try. Isn't that what the saying is? So give it a shot. Alright, I'm going to wrap this up for tonight. It's 11 p.m. here where I live. You guys take care, and I'll catch you on the next one. Ciao.